he spit on me. And I will never forget how I felt.
Slightly different Friday video, as you can tell from the title. I wanted to do something, it's very different obviously to what I normally do on my channel. If you're first time seeing me, I normally do videos about fashion and style and all that kind of stuff. That's my jam. But based on the kind of unusual and unique, sad, inspiring, global week that we've had, I wanted to come in here and do a video that is about racism. In the light of the death of George Floyd, I have, and we have all noticed, especially on social media, that there has been a groundswell of support around the world on what happened, and it's got to the point where if people are not saying anything, then that's considered as being complicit, because it's basically saying, and I shouldn't have to explain it, but I just want to get the point across really strongly, that when you say nothing, that means you're okay, that if somebody gets shot and killed in front of you, literally this right there, you just walk by and say nothing, even if you saw the person who did it, or you witnessed somebody being bullied, or their life is taken away from them, like I said, and you do nothing, absolutely nothing. Your silence is like you're condoning it, and you've already chosen the side of what you're supporting by your silence. Racism is something that I've experienced, and it's something that Black people have experienced all their life, going back from my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, sorry, and even further. It's been going on for decades, and it's still here today. And as you know, a lot of you know, I am born and raised in London, which is a multicultural place, and I now live in New York. In England, I never really experienced racism too much, although like I said on my Instagram earlier this week, I did have occasions where people would say to me, "You don't speak like a Black person," and yeah, I used to get that. When I came to New York a few years ago, I did notice that it's much more segregated in America than it is in London. I talk about London because that's where I was born and raised, like I said. And over there, I see much more mixed race couples. And when I came to, like black and white, and when I came to, like, you see them all the time, every day. But in New York, you go days, if not weeks, without seeing one. I remember there was a time when I used to have a printing job. I had a job whereby I was sitting at a desk and there was a girl next to me. Her name was Chantel, a white girl. And she came from Texas. She had a Texas drawl when she spoke. And the office was in New York. And we used to speak to printing plants across the country. One of the plants printing plants decided to fly Chantel and I out to them to take a tour of the plant and see how it works and how things are printed and all that jazz. And then when we were there for like a couple of days, and then when we came back, Chantel told me, she said, "So you'll never guess." And I said, "What?" "Don't forget to go back to Southern drawl." She goes, "When they first met us, they thought that," this is her speaking, she said, "they thought that I was Black and they thought that you, Karen, was white." And I was like, "Really?" And she said, yeah. They said that to this day, they're shocked because they talked to her, and they've been telling her and confiding with her and saying that they thought I was white based on just over the years of speaking to me on the phone and speaking to Chantel on the phone. So I thought that was really an interesting assumption for people to make about other people, because it almost reminds me of the statistical fact that if your name is African American sounding, or basically sounds like a black name on resumes or CVs, we call them in England, that you are, I forget what the percentage is, if it's double the likelihood of your resume being pushed to one side, solely based on that. Michael and I were driving to New Orleans. We go there quite often because he's originally from there. He's Cajun, and we decided to drive, and it takes about 3 days to drive to New Orleans, depending on how fast you drive. And it was nighttime, late, like 11 o'clock at night or so, and we decided let's just stay overnight in a hotel. And so I was like checking up and researching hotels in the area, and I was calling them up, and I found one, and I said, hey, it's just 2 of us, do you have availability for us to stay one night only, we'll be out in the morning? And he said to me on the phone, yes, great, looking for when you're going to be here. And I said, we'll be in about half an hour, my name is Karen. He said, great, I'll see you soon. Hang up the phone. We arrive at this hotel lobby. Michael stays in the car. I get out of the car and I walk into the reception of that same hotel. And I recognized his voice because I'd just spoken to this man on the phone. It's a white guy. And I introduced myself and I said, hi, it's Karen. I believe we just spoke on the phone about half an hour ago. I called about checking in for the 2 of us. And he looked at me and said, the hotel's full. I'm sorry, we don't have any availability. And that was one of my, at least in America, one of my first face-to-face experiences of racism. Yeah, I didn't even say anything, because you know what, if that's how you feel, I don't want to stay here anyway. And so we just got in the car and left. But there was one incident that I just remembered. I just wanted to pop in and put this in here. And it was, Michael and I wanted to go out to a new restaurant that had opened up in the area. We've always been going past it and wanted to try it out, so we thought, okay, let's just go in. So it wasn't like a posh restaurant or anything, so it was very casual. So we were greeted by, I believe it was a white woman, or was it a guy? I believe it was a woman. And we said, hey, just here for 2 for lunch. I believe it was lunch time, because I feel like it was during the day. And she said, okay, just 1 minute. And we could see, so we said, okay, cool. And there was people already there sitting, eating, and we could see some tables were empty and ready, like prepped and laid out. And about 5 minutes goes by and we stood there still, and she had returned, but this time she wasn't coming over to us, which I thought she was going to do, to tell us to sit down. She instead greeted 2 other people who walked in, another couple, and she asked them the same, and they said the same thing, table for 2. And she immediately sat them down. She didn't ask them if they had a reservation. She just escorted them to a table after grabbing 2 menus and sat them down. And then we thought, okay, it's odd, we're still standing here, okay. And then I want to say about 3 more couples, or at least sets of people, came in after that. And she repeated it. Come in, we need a table of 3, need a table of 2. We noticed there were a few tables of 2 that were coming in after us, which is why we didn't think that maybe she was waiting for a table of 2 for us, even though we could see them ourselves. But we don't know, are they being reserved for somebody, you know what I mean? So yes, that happened. Honestly, I want to say a total of 15 minutes or so, which is quite a long time to just be standing there doing nothing, and somebody who just have said to you, oh, just hold on a minute. And you're watching other people come in. She doesn't ask them if they've got a reservation, nor do they say they have one, and she just sits them. They were all white, all of those customers. So we thought, this is ridiculous. So we just looked to each other and said, you ready? And I said, yeah. and then we just walked out. And we made a promise to each other to never go back there since. We can't prove why she chose to not seat us, but the writing to me is just on the wall. The only difference I noticed between us, Michael and I, and the other people who were coming in was, I hate to say it, was they were all white and so was she. And looking back on it, so were all the staff at that restaurant as well. But it still didn't dawn on me, and I didn't see any black faces sitting black people eating at that restaurant either. But it's still, I'm used to being in environments like that, so it didn't twig until looking back on it that what else was it? Oh, and by the way, that restaurant has now gone. I think it just went out of business, and there is a completely different restaurant in its place, and we have been there and it's been absolutely fine. Karma. I'm just thinking about the companies that I've worked at, both in America, and I also temped for a short period of time in England. And I remember that for the majority of the offices that I worked at temping wise, I was one of, if not the only, one of two maybe, or three at the most, black faces in a sea of white in the office. And I used to think to myself, where are all the black people? I know they're qualified for these jobs because I'm here. And not only that, when I was at university, I went to South Bank University, big up if you're in the house, Elephant and Castle. And in my class, it was so diverse. And to get that split screen difference, right, from being in class, studying in university, which is so diverse, and then crossing over into corporate land, and you walk through the doors, and often the only black face is the receptionist, or comment below if you agree with this and you've experienced this, or they work in the HR department. And what happened with George Floyd, I feel, is the sharp end of this. And as I've said before on my Instagram, you know, racism has always existed. This is something from Will Smith. I'm not taking this as my own quote. It's just being filmed. That's the only difference now. In terms of actionable changes, I would like to see corporations out there, and I'm going to talk specifically about, you know, in working in the fashion industry, because that's where I am now. I would like to see equality at the highest level in corporations. I want them to be those decision makers, the senior management and executive levels. I want to see black faces. I want to see myself. Because once you have that, then we have a chance at seeing more equality in everything that happens and is produced from those companies thereafter. Because a lot of the reasons you're seeing mistakes happen and you get these PR disasters with it, it's not diverse. There's no black people there. The ones who are actually making the decisions, where are they? We need to see change, and I think that's the only way that you're going to see anything, is if we start to see that at the very least. And I know I mentioned this again on my Instagram, but I want to put this out here on YouTube because it's a bigger platform for me, because I know there's a lot of you who aren't on Instagram, so these messages are for you as well. Army Song is a fashion blogger, and she did a video called Diversity in Fashion about a year or two ago, about 2 years ago maybe. And she had Shiona Turini and Nicole, oh my gosh, I'll put their names on the screen, but two prominent black women in the fashion industry. And Shiona was recounting a story to Army of how she remembers so many times when she would be in boardrooms, right, amongst a sea of white people, and they would be casting campaigns to use influencers or content creators, however you want to call us, for campaigns they've got coming up. And they were asking everyone to submit who they thought would be ideal candidates to consider. And Shiona said she always slid across the table some black content creators who she thought were just perfect for the campaign. She said that every time she did that, she was so sick and tired of doing it, because she said she did it every single time. They would always separate out all the black faces. Let's just keep it blunt and how it is. And they would focus and run with the white people who had been submitted for consideration. And I know that there are a lot of companies out there, and maybe you are one of them and you're listening to me right now. It hurts. You are one of those, I said in the beginning, you're the complicit ones, that in your silence, by your inaction, you are choosing how you want the system to run. And you're picking people who look like you. And that's all you're doing versus what looks like the real world. And one of the things I've noticed is there has been a groundswell from the consumer level up to call out brands for their lack of diversity and their lack of inclusion, whether it be on their social media side or within their organization. Show us the receipts, show us how diverse you are within your organization. And I think that's really important, and I hope that that doesn't change. I just remembered one last thing I wanted to mention. There was a time, I'm not going to call this particular brand out, but they are pretty well known for having put their foot in it from a discrimination point of view, and they had to clean it. And it happened about a year ago, maybe a bit longer. And they had this campaign that was based around the world, and they had like a whole host of influencers who were invited to travel to all these different destinations around the world. There wasn't 10 or 20, I think there was more influencers than that. It was like 30 of them, maybe even more. They were all either white, or the darkest or the most sort of non-white they went was Asians, not one black face. And that was something that they got called out for instantly. That same brand reached out to me after this fiasco PR disaster went down, about 2 weeks or so later. For the first time, I'd never heard from them before, and they offered me gifting of their clothes, right? And I was really hurt by that. I was hurt by it because I knew that they were only contacting me because of the color of my skin. Just about this, and helping them to get out, to dig themselves out of what they had just, done for themselves, dug themselves into. A later event with a bunch of influencers, I learned at that table from other fellow black influencers or content creators that they also had received that same email asking for the same thing, and they all declined. I'm going to end this video by just giving you a couple of examples of people who chimed in with what has happened to them, and I hope things change, and we'll see. But I will talk to you lot next week, Friday. You can follow me on my Instagram between this Friday and next, and I'll give this video a thumbs up if you can resonate. Leave any stories that you can relate to on this. I'll see you next Friday. Bye.
So you assume that if you just do everything right, if you just do everything by the book, get all the education you can, get the best job you can, just do everything right, then you will not find yourself in situations where folks assume the worst of you, because you would have gotten the degrees, and you would have, you get a nice place, and you get a nice car, and you just try to do all the things that show that you were a good, upstanding citizen, until you are reminded that there is one thing that you didn't do and you couldn't change, and that's your skin color. And I think this is why this one particular incident, even though not the most overt form of racism that I've experienced, it's the one that hurt the most. I'm definitely used to being asked or questioned about whether I belong in a space, what am I doing in a space. Used to that. But I think there's one place that is so sacred to so many of us, and that's our home. And this happened a few years back at my home, an apartment that I share with my husband, and it was closing in on midnight, and we were in bed, it was late, and all of a sudden there was a loud bang at the door. Boom, 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 boom. police, open the door. It's like, I like rose up out of bed because I've never had the police. I've had like zero interactions, at least at that point, with the police. And so, like, why the police at the door? So I'm trying to quickly get ready as the pounding is getting louder and heavier, and it's like faster, and it's like, boom, 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 open the door, police. I rush to the door with my husband trailing behind me. I get to the door before he does, and I look through the peephole, and I see there's 2 white officers, and I ask through the door, please show your badges, and what is this about? They show the badges, but like, just open the door. So I repeat, what is this about? Now it's my husband and I, like, what is this about? It's like, just open the door. And we realize they're not gonna get any quieter. And we have neighbors, and this is starting to feel like a thing. So open the door, and almost immediately, I could feel it. It's this look of just, I don't know why, pure just disgust, and no attempt to be cordial or decent to me. And the first thing is, what's wrong with you people? You smoking crack? I was so taken aback by that. There are so many things I expected to hear. That was definitely not one of the things my husband or I expected to hear. And so now we're like, wait, what are you, why are you here? What is this about? And they still won't say anything. They're like, we got a call. So we gotta look around. And it's like, what is this about? And it's almost like we did not deserve an explanation. We did not deserve any respect. They'd already looked at us and done a calculation about who we were and made assumptions. Forget the fact that we've been doing any and everything possible because we want to be these great upstanding citizens. In their minds, we're just, I don't know where it came from. They're like, ugh. And so they continue at this point to be very loud about they need to get in because they got a call. And, you know, if we're smoking crack, which at this point, it's unfortunate, but you know, you become so conscious of the space you occupy, and you're conscious of the people around you. And I have neighbors, and I'm thinking, what must they be thinking is going on over here? What on earth? And before I could even really get into anything about the situation, they get radioed over, and it becomes clear that they're at the wrong place. And so mid-conversation, they're like, oh, okay, actually, we're going somewhere else. And I was like, wait a minute, excuse you? This is so rude. And so can you explain what this is about? And I mean, you can't just go around doing that. I'm like, this is where I live. And they just looked at us like, and laughed. Because it was funny. It was funny to them. We did not deserve any kind of basic decency. And they laughed and they walked off. And I was so heated, I actually filed a formal complaint against the officers. But like these things are, it unfortunately didn't go anywhere. Feeling very hurt and very angry. And that's not a way to live.
A few years ago, I was in the train station with my girlfriend in Union Square. And she looks white. She's extremely lighter than me, right? We're in the train station, walking to our train, and all of a sudden I heard her cursing. So it was very abrupt. So I'm like, what happened? And she didn't want to tell me, but I can see her anger was directed towards a guy who was walking away. And his back was to her, so I couldn't see him or anything, you know, but I could tell who it was directed towards. I'm like, what the hell happened? And she didn't want to tell me immediately, but maybe a few minutes had passed and she finally said, he whispered to me, you're with a monkey, referring to me. You have to know your strength, because what that person may have wanted from me was for me to react in the animal he's calling me. So I'm not going to give you that.
Just to start by saying, I'm from London, England, and so is my boyfriend. But originally, my family are from Italy, and his family are from Pakistan and India. When we went to just eat locally, we live in West London, so it's quite a nice area. We were going to eat at a restaurant. He was actually just parking the car, and I walked in to go and get a table. The girl saw me, went and grabbed a menu I was like, can I please have a table for two? And she was like, yeah, lovely. Went and grabbed the menus to go and get us our table and get us seated. And what actually happened was she turned around, my boyfriend walked in, and she said, actually, sorry, we don't have a table for you. We are fully booked. And I looked around looked around the restaurant. There was plenty of tables for us to sit at. It was also sunny, so there was tables outside that were empty and free. And at first I was really confused and didn't really get it, because we have had experiences like that before, but not in England, not in London, if I'm being really honest. And this was, I would probably say, about 3 or 4 years ago now. I was quite perplexed, and it didn't really hit me until I left that that's what it was. So obviously I said to her, but there's plenty of tables. What do you mean? And she's like, sorry, we don't have any tables. And what she really meant was, we haven't got tables for you, and what you guys look like.
The last week I've spent, like many black people that I know and I've spoken to, we've spent reflecting on our experiences, thinking about the Black Lives Matter movement, and George Floyd. And it's been a tough old week, I will say. Thinking about my childhood in the UK, how certain things have changed me and the way I think and the person that I am, the way I behave. It's opened a lot of old wounds, and some of them not very pleasant. People are brought up to think in a certain way. So I would say that what's happened now is that the Black Lives Movement has highlighted the fact that some of the things that people were doing previously weren't necessarily acceptable, and that your black friends, your black colleagues, your black family members tolerated it because we have learnt to adapt, we've learnt to pick our battles, we've learnt to make ourselves small, to make ourselves not threatening. And, you know, if you're at a dinner party and somebody says something that's not appropriate or that upsets you, and you're the only black person at that table, do you get up and say, hold on a minute, no, that's not right? Some people will, but a lot of the times your black friend will just brush it off, and as I said, pick their battles. And that's a heavy burden to carry. It's made me feel very guilty for letting certain things slide. It's made me feel very not nice about certain things and certain situations that I've been in. Yeah, it's a toughie. It's a tough one. I've decided to speak about the microaggressions, the small comments, the throwaway, the casual racism, because I think we have more chance of changing people if we talk about that. Will change the majority of the way white people think, instead of going for the people who downright know that they're racist, and, you know, the ones that carry the tiki torches and the ones that will burn your house down knowing that you're in it. So it's just little things, stupid questions about your hair, about your skin, about your food, things that I wouldn't dream of asking or saying. you know, the old question of how often do you wash your hair? I don't think I've ever asked a white person how often they wash their hair. I don't think I've ever, I know I've never wanted to touch a white person's hair that I didn't know, especially. I would never walk up to a work colleague who's got a new hairdo and reach for their hair, because their space does not belong to me. And I often feel that with black people, some white people think that they can just invade your space, invade who you are, ask you personal questions. Yeah, and you know, and especially in the workplace with people around, it's just, yeah, it's just tricky pulling people up all the time, who speak like that. Yeah, growing up in the 70s, going to school, not many black people on the TV, not many black families represented in magazines, black people on quiz shows and soaps. So we always felt that we were always just visiting. In the playground, I've been called black doo-doo. Being told to go home and wash. My skin's dirty. I remember once the first time I went to St Lucia, I was 13, and I went to St Lucia for 4 weeks, and I came back and I was considerably darker. And I was taking the mickey out of at school. People said I was dirty. I should go home and wash. And I just remember having like the best holiday ever and coming back to at least a week of abuse from children who didn't know better. And you carry that around with you, because at that kind of age it reiterates itself constantly that you're not good enough. You're not good enough, you're different. You try your best to fit in. You try your best to accommodate those around you. And this week I just thought, I still do it. I still do it. I still make myself small. I still accommodate other people's needs before my own. I don't want to make other people feel uncomfortable in certain situations. So if somebody says something that offends me, I won't make them feel uncomfortable for saying that. What I'll do instead is I'll internalise that and not feel that I have a place to call it out that you like a certain music when they how many people of colour have been used as the party starter? You get up and dance. Come on, you like this song? Dragging you up to Bob Marley. Yeah, it's a hard one. It's a hard one. You make excuses for people. I remember not being able to catch a black cab for love nor money if I was on my own. If I was in town and I needed, this is before Uber, and I didn't want to catch a night bus home, I would try and hail a taxi. Lights on, for hire, would not stop for love nor money. Single black woman, 12 o'clock at night, in town, wanting to get home, and no cab driver wants to ensure that she gets home safely. The amount of times I've had to get night buses, on my own and put myself at risk. No problem if I was with 2 or 3 white girls, they would stop. But if you was on your own, or if you was with another black girl, or even worse with a black man, no chance in stopping. And you just knew this. You just knew it. You sucked it up, and you carried on. Being ignored at bars, being ignored in restaurants. Day to day, it is a burden. It is a burden. We are talking about it now like it's something new, like it's I, oh dear, hold on a minute. It has been a burden, it's been a weight on our shoulders for like forever. Wow.
My name is Lara. I think, like any black person, I could relate countless examples of concrete, overt and covert acts of racism I've experienced since I was born. But today I'm going to relate just one experience that I had not too long ago at my workplace that I feel is quite emblematic of the type of things we have to put up with on a daily basis. I work for a very large and very well-known humanitarian organization, which is present in many countries throughout the world and which prides itself on its diverse and multicultural staff. I have many years of experience in my field. I'm multilingual, and I have a master's degree. Now, I'm telling you these things because my boss at the time, of all people, knew my professional profile very well. Anyway, one day I was sitting at my desk and I was busy working on a key document, as you do, and said boss approached me. She was holding a mug in her hand. Now, our office is an open space, so everyone can hear anything that anyone says. Anyways, so she walks up and she puts her mug down on my desk and says the following phrase: "When I lived in Kenya, I had a tea boy." Well, needless to say, I didn't get her any tea that day, not then and not ever. And for anyone who thinks that racist behavior is the vestige of middle-aged or angry young white men, or for anyone who hasn't seen the Amy Cooper video that's been circulating for the past few weeks, this person I'm talking about is a well-educated, relatively young Canadian woman. Thank God I don't have to work with her anymore. That's all I have to say.
Hi, my name is Tina. I live in London. I grew up in Germany, and as many black people, I've faced racism throughout my whole life. And there's one particular story I would love to share because that was the first time I really felt the hatred of racism. I was 13, it was after school, I was on my way home, and I had to take the bus with my best friend. And the second I came into the bus, this boy greeted me with, "Hi, Snickers," which is just stupid. And I ignored it because at that point I was already used to being called names. So after a few minutes, me and my friend, we were talking, something hit my neck. And I touched it and I was like, what's that? And I realized it's wet. And I looked at my friend and she looked at me and we were like, what's going on? And then I heard someone laughing and I turned around and that boy was just laughing at me because he spit on me. And I will never forget how I felt. I felt embarrassed. I was in shock. I felt humiliated, and I felt less, especially because no one reacted to it. No one said anything. But there were grown-ups in the bus, and they just ignored it. They just didn't say anything. And I will never forget that feeling. because I was so embarrassed that someone did something like that to me.